My name is Sean, and I live in Northern California, specifically the Bay Area in a town about 30 minutes south of San Francisco. I got out of school about 2 weeks ago. Me and my two closest friends, who I'll call Vic and Ben, all finished our sophomore year. The two of them are kind of troublemakers. They smoke and drink, and are your typical class clowns. I don't do any of that stuff. I'm more of an introvert, and very shy and quiet. But they respect my decisions to not smoke or drink, which means a lot. For a bit of backstory with my friends, Vic and I had all of our classes together this year. He's very chill, but sometimes he tries to be the center of attention too much, and can be very annoying at times. Ben and I, however, are much closer, and I consider him to be my best friend. He keeps things real with me, and I prefer it that way. He's always trying to get me out of my shell and go to parties, or hook up with girls. He gets pretty upset or pissed off when I don't want to hang out, as I prefer to stay home and be a couch potato. So this happened last Friday. I was home doing nothing and was pretty bored. I worked out, played a bunch of video games, and watched some television. I did this every day since summer started, and I wanted something new. Around 4:30, my phone rang. It was a notification from our group chat. There was a message from Vic. "Hey, any of you got plans tonight? Sean, if you have hockey practice, don't bother responding." I've used the "I have practice" excuse a lot, so I decided to respond. "No, I have no plans. What do you got in mind?" Vic replied, "Let's go tagging." If you don't know, tagging is graffiti. Ben almost got arrested one time when he got caught by a store owner. I replied, "Sure, why not? Where are we going to meet up?" Vic and Ben couldn't believe that I was going out with them. They thought I was kidding, and made some jokes here and there. Ben then said, "Let's meet at the mall near the Barnes & Noble. I'll get back to you guys later with the time." We all agreed on the plans, and I waited. It was now 11:45 at night. I was watching Breaking Bad, and my phone buzzed with Ben saying, "Alright, I'm heading out now." This was my cue to put on a hoodie, grab a key to my house, and take off. I made sure to stay quiet so nobody knew I was sneaking out. The air was somewhat humid that night, and the streets were deserted. I walked to the Barnes & Noble, which was about 15 minutes away, and when I got there, Vic was waiting for me. And I saw Ben pulling into the parking lot in his dad's Range Rover. We got a kick out of it. Ben always thought he was the shit when he was driving that thing. We walked down the street to a bus stop, which they started tagging in bubble letters. I stood there awkwardly as my friends were breaking the law. To be honest with you, graffiti really isn't my thing. "Write something," Ben said. I grabbed a spray can and wrote "Pop Up," which was a song we all listened to by one of our favorite rapper groups. We continued down the street, and we saw that on one of the benches, there was a homeless man sleeping. If you live in the Bay Area or have been to San Francisco, you know that homeless people litter the streets. We saw it as no big deal, until Ben walked up and took a selfie with him as a joke. As we were standing there while Ben sent it to his friends or whatever, what happened next nearly made me shit my pants. A scream from Ben made me jump, as we saw the homeless man grabbing Ben by the back of his pants. Ben squirmed and punched at the man, as Vic tried to pull him away. I could see the crazed look in the man's eyes, wide open like floodlights, and a grin, exposing his smile with missing teeth and rotting black gums. We got Ben out of the grip of the man, and we started to run down the street, not caring about how much noise we made. We hid behind a sign and some bushes. Ben threw up because, not to my surprise, he drank beforehand and ran too fast. Vic couldn't stop coughing. Once we all somewhat calmed down, I broke the silence. "You fucking idiot, Ben," I told him. He played it off by laughing, but neither Vic and I joined him. We all started to get up, but what we saw on the sidewalk had your typical horror film written all over it. The homeless man was standing under a streetlight. His head was down, and there was a knife in his hand. "You guys, this guy has a fucking knife," Vic said. We were all frozen in fear, and the homeless man suddenly turned, threw back his arm, and released the knife from his hand. The whole world seemed to slow down as we saw the knife flying in the air towards us. I jumped to the side and felt the knife whoosh by my head, narrowly missing me by inches. We all took off from the hiding spot and booked it down the street as the homeless man started running after us, snarling like some kind of zombie. There was a Burger King still open and I pointed it out, so that's where we started running to. Once we burst into the store, a few of the employees looked at us like we had 5 heads. I immediately pulled out my phone and thought about calling the police, but decided against it. Vic had a backpack full of spray cans and probably weed. I didn't want to risk him getting into serious trouble. We waited at the Burger King until they closed, which is when we were forced to take a longer walk away from the street, where we saw the homeless man. We all got to Ben's car and he dropped me off at home. There was barely any dialogue exchanged between us. All of us were trapped and confused in our own thoughts. When I got home, I never felt better to fall into bed, thankful that we all got out of that horror story of a night, alive. I live in North Hollywood, California. My brother and I live together in a nice, quiet neighborhood, where not even car break-ins happen. Trust me, in North Hollywood, there aren't many neighborhoods like that. A few years ago, my next-door neighbor, Jillian, adopted a dog to keep her older dog company while she was at work. I work from home, so she would often ask me to let her dogs out around lunch, and sometimes again around 4 p.m. if she was working late. One day Jillian called and said she had a meeting after work and asked if I could go over twice that day. I said yes, and at around 12 p.m. I went over for my first visit. Now, I should explain the basic layout of Jillian's house. As you walk through the front door, it's a pretty straight shot from the door, through the living room and dining room to get to the back door, which obviously leads into the backyard. The bedrooms and bathroom were on the left side of the house, and the kitchen was on the right side. Jillian always closes the doors, leaving just the dining room and living room for the dogs to hang out in. As I made my way through, I noticed that all the doors were closed as usual, and greeted the dogs and took them into the backyard to do their business and run around. While we were outside, I couldn't help but shake the feeling that I was being watched. I started to feel very uneasy. I heard the dogs back inside as calmly as I could, made sure everything was locked up, and then I walked home. At around 4 p.m., I started back over for my second visit, and as I approached the front door and put the key in, I had this sinking feeling in my chest. I shrugged it off and went inside so I could take care of the dogs. As I walked over to them, I noticed that one of the bedroom doors was wide open. I let the dogs out and started thinking back to my first visit. I was fairly certain that the doors were all closed. I thought to myself, maybe Jillian forgot something and came back to the house and forgot to tell me. I pulled out my phone and called her. "Hey, did you come back home earlier? I'm here to let the dogs out and I saw that your bedroom door was open." What she said next chilled me to the bone. "No, I'm just getting in my car to head home now. Why?" I wanted to run and scream, but I decided to act as normal as possible, because I didn't know if whoever opened the bedroom door was still in the house. I told Jillian that I was calling the cops and hung up. I left the dogs in the backyard and went back inside and said aloud, as calmly as I could, "Bye guys, see you tomorrow." But as I exited the house and started to dial 911, I heard Jillian's front door open, and a tall, thin man, I would say about in his 30s, emerged from the doorway and began to run towards me. I ran as fast as I could to my door, which wasn't locked. I slammed the door behind me and locked it, and that's when I heard from the other side of the door,
"I'm coming for you, bitch."
Before I could hit the call button, I heard a window break in the kitchen. I realized that my brother was not home and had to fend for myself. I ran into my brother's room, went through his closet and found a baseball bat. I could now hear the guy walking around my house looking for me. He came into my brother's room and looked under the bed. I stood up from my place in the closet and prepared for him to find me. I was sobbing as quietly as I could and praying that I would get a swing in before he got me. He stood up and made his way over to the closet. He opened the door and I swung and hit him in the chest. He fell to the ground, but managed to get right back up and knocked the bat out of my hands and then shoved me to the ground. He then started dragging me out of the room. There in the hallway he met my brother, who had a knife. He had come home after he realized that he forgot his wallet. He stabbed the guy in his shoulder, and the intruder moaned as he fell to the floor. My brother kicked him in the face and told me to call the cops. Just then, I heard sirens outside. Jillian had called the cops right after we had hung up. She knew that it was her crazy ex-husband who had broken into her house. The cops dragged the man out of my house, but later confessed that he had planned on killing Jillian, but heard that I had called her, so he decided to kill me and anyone else in my house as well. He was not well in the head, if you catch my drift. I hate to think of what would have happened to me if my brother hadn't forgot his wallet. This happened when I was 15. My dad and I were driving my sister from San Diego to Austin, Texas, where she would start her new job. She had lived in Guam for a year, and she couldn't afford to ship her car all the way to Texas, only to California. So my dad and I loaded up her car and began the drive all the way to the Lone Star State. We had been going for a few hours and decided to stop in El Centro to get some gas and use the bathroom. I didn't have to go, so I volunteered to pump the gas, as my dad and sister went inside. There were a few other cars at the pumps and in the parking lot. There was a man about 5'10", average size. He was at the pump adjacent to ours. As soon as I threw some trash away, he began giving me this look of sheer malice and hate. Being the unathletic turd that I am, I was slightly intimidated. My father walked out of the store and told me that he bought $35 worth of gas. He didn't seem to notice the strange man staring at me as he climbed in the driver's seat. He was looking at his phone. I began to pump the gas and tried to make the best of the situation. My sister walked out of the store, and I averted my eyes to look at her. And then I saw from my peripheral vision the man reaching into his pocket and producing a knife. He then harshly whispered to me to get into his car, or he was going to stab me. I went in full defense mode and shoved the guy as hard as I could, knocking him off balance. He hit the gas hose that connected to his car, spraying him in gasoline. As he fell backward, I hung up my gas hose and yelled at my sister to get into the car and for my dad to fire it up. We jumped in the car, and I think my dad saw the knife because he floored it the hell out of there. I saw the guy jump into his white Chevy and turn it on, but by that time, we were already out of the station and going back to the interstate. I told Dad what happened, and he drove even faster to get back to the interstate. I then looked out of the back window and saw the same white Chevy weaving in between traffic, seemingly chasing after us. He pulled up next to us, and that's when I saw that there was someone else in the passenger seat. The passenger rolled down his window and pointed a handgun at us, screaming at us to pull over. Instead, my dad hit the gas, bringing us up to almost 100 miles per hour. The Chevy was still next to us. Suddenly, my dad shouted at me and my sister to get down and brace ourselves. The Chevy then abruptly swerved and sideswiped us, but the collision caused them to lose focus, sending them into the far lane, where they hit the back of a semi going at least 90. As we sped away, we saw that their whole front end was smashed, and they were forced to pull over. We got off the next exit and went to a police station and reported the incident. After about an hour, they told us they found the broken down Chevy. Both the assailants had left it behind and had fled on foot even before the truck driver could get out of his rig. Apparently, when I described the appearance of the guy, the police knew that he was a serial offender and had reports of him luring children into his car across the Southwest and bringing them back to Mexico. He was wanted on several counts of kidnapping. After a few days, we were able to continue our move to Texas, and the rest of the trip went off without a hitch. Hey, what's up guys, Uncle Unit here, and I hope you enjoyed today's stories. As I said when I announced this video, I do plan on covering all 50 states if I can. Sometimes there just may not be enough stories to give a particular state a video, but we'll see what happens. And I think the next one is going to be... let me see. Let's go with Texas. So if I have any viewers from Texas who want to share their story, please send it into the email that's on screen right now. I'm also looking for submissions for Based on True Events number 5. So that's also in the works if you want to send in a story for that. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate the support, and I'll catch you in the next video. And as always, never forget, there's always a reason to be afraid.